the answer was no. Today, I think the answer is maybe. This leader of the Labour Party makes weakness and indecision an art form. That is the fact. Now, he was giving me my end of term, my end of year report. Let me give him his end of year report. He told us at the start of year in his New Year's message, the fight back started in Scotland. Well, that went well, didn't it? He told us he'd have credible plans to cut the deficit. We still haven't seen them. He said he would stand up to vested interests, and yet he backed the biggest strike for years. We all know he has achieved one thing. He has completely united his party. Every single one of them has asked Santa for the same thing, a new leader for Christmas.
Order! The House. I'm sure government backbenchers will want to hear their own colleague, Mr. Martin Vickers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday's announcement about local television was good news for my constituency, where Channel 7, the sole survivor from the original batch, is based. Does the Prime Minister agree that local broadcasting strengthens local communities and advances the big society? And if he's in North Lincolnshire in the near future, would he find time to pay them a visit?
I've been delighted to do that. I don't have any immediate plans to visit North Lincolnshire, but I do support local television, and I also think that North Lincolnshire had some very good news with the Siemens plant going into Hull, and I think that's excellent news for the whole region.
Mr. David Blunkett.
Mr. Speaker, in the early new year, the government intend to announce a wholesale revision of the national curriculum. Could I put it to the Prime Minister that it would be perverse, in fact it would be absurd, to be requiring those coming from abroad to settle in Britain, to learn about our democracy, to take citizenship courses, whilst withdrawing them for the teaching of citizenship and democracy to our own children in our own schools?
Well, I listened very carefully to what the right honourable gentleman says, because I actually agree with some of the proposals he put forward when Home Secretary about citizenship, and I think many members in this House would have been to the citizenship ceremonies that he was responsible for, and I think it's been a good addition to our country and our democracy, and on behalf of the whole House, I pay tribute to him for that. We'll look very carefully about what he says about the curriculum, but the key aim has got to be to make sure we teach the basics properly and well, and we test on those basics, because if you can't read and write properly, no lessons in citizenship are going to mean anything at all.
Sir Justin Tomlinson.
Mr. Speaker, 91% of people who get into financial difficulty believe they would have avoided doing so had they been better informed. Therefore, ahead of tomorrow's debate on financial education, would the Prime Minister support our calls for compulsory financial education for young people?
Well, it very much links in with the last question. I strongly support teaching young children about the importance of financial education, but the point of having a proper review of the curriculum is to make sure what is absolutely essential and core and what can be included as extra lessons.
Yvonne Favag.
Unemployment is going up and living standards are being squeezed. Many more people are being forced into the hand of the payday lenders and the fee-charging debt management companies. Will the Prime Minister act to protect ordinary people who are being preyed and ripped off?
Well, the Honourable Lady speaks with great experience because she worked for Citizens Advice Bureau before coming to this House and stands up for Citizens Advice Bureau and is right to do so. All of us in our constituencies know what a brilliant job that they do. She will know the last government wrestled with this question about how you best regulate doorstep lenders and other lenders and the danger of driving people into the loan sharks if you get rid of the regulated sector. I'm very happy to discuss this further with interested colleagues. It is a very difficult subject to get right, but this government is working at it.
Simon Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the Prime Minister share my concern over the impact of pocket money priced alcohol on the state of our nation's health, the antisocial behaviour in our town centres and the damage it does to our community pubs?
No, I think the honourable gentleman makes an extremely important point. There's no doubt in my mind that very low-cost alcohol is part of the problem in our town centres. One of the answers the government has already come up with is to ban deeply discounted selling of alcohol. But of course we need to look at the broader question of low-cost alcohol. I note very carefully the letter that's in the papers this morning from a whole set of people with great expertise about this, and we're looking very carefully at that issue.
This is Jenny Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This morning we learned that Teesside Airport is up for sale. And it seems as though, as unemployment is skyrocketing in the northeast, our planes may be grounded. Isn't this yet further evidence that the loss of infrastructure and jobs in the northeast, that this government's economic plan is a catastrophic failure?
Well, the key thing about the future of Durham Airport, which is a vital airport, is not necessarily who owns it, but is it being invested in? Is it being expanded? Is it working well? That is the key question, and that is the question I know my right honourable friend, the Transport Secretary, is looking at carefully.
Cheryl Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Has the Prime Minister seen the OECD and the National Institute of Economic and Social Research findings this week, showing that soaring immigration was not caused by the prospect of prosperity, but just by the open-door policies of the last government? And will he stop it happening again?
The Honourable Lady is absolutely right. The report said specifically the increase in net immigration to the UK was not driven primarily by the economic performance of the UK or other countries. Instead, it points to immigration policy. And the fact is, under the last government, they quadrupled immigration. They let an extra 2.2 million people into the country. The answer is to deal with the bogus colleges, and we're doing that, to put a limit on economic migration from outside the EU, and we are doing that, and to have proper border controls and a border police command, and we're doing that as well.
John Robertson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The autumn statement saw 400,000 Scottish children lose over £40 million due to changes in the tax system. In my constituency, that meant £600,000 taken from children. Why is the Prime Minister taking money out of children's pockets and while being in the pockets of the bankers?
I'm afraid to say to the honourable gentleman, he's just plain wrong. The child tax credit is going up by £135, and he talks about the bankers. It's this government that has actually put in place a bank levy that's going to raise more every year than Labour's one-off bonus tax raised in 1 year.
Julian Sturdy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a York MP, I'm extremely proud of our city's vibrant tourism sector. Does my right honourable friend agree with me that tourism plays a key role in our local economies? And will he ensure that northern tourist attractions, in particular, are promoted in the run-up to the Olympic Games?
I think my honourable friend makes a very important point. There are going to be millions of people coming to this country for the Olympic Games. We need to encourage them not just to go to the Olympic Games, but to visit other parts of the country and to return to Britain for a subsequent visit. And there'll be all sorts of promotions and schemes that we will be running to encourage just that. If we can encourage people more generally to visit other places as well as London, and York has many great tourist attractions and things of historical importance to see, we'd drive a huge amount of jobs and growth in our regions.
Rushnara Ali.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the 16th December, Bangladesh will mark its 40th anniversary as an independent nation following a war that cost 3 million lives. I want to pay tribute to the contribution made by this Parliament in supporting the people for their fight for liberty and self-determination. As the second most vulnerable country to climate change, with an estimated 15 to 20 million people likely to be affected in the coming decades, does the Prime Minister agree with me that it is now more important than ever before to support developing countries from the devastating effects of climate change?
Yes, I absolutely agree with the Honourable Lady, and I think the whole House should recognise what she's done in raising this issue at this time as Bangladesh approaches this important anniversary. I think Britain can be proud of the fact that we have very good relations with Bangladesh, and our aid programme in Bangladesh is now one of the leading ones anywhere in the world, from anywhere in the world into that country. We're spending specific money on helping them with climate change, meeting all the promises that we have. I've met myself with the Prime Minister of Bangladesh. One of the issues we do have to raise, though, is there are human rights issues in Bangladesh, and we shouldn't be scared of raising them with the authorities in the proper way.
Philip Hollowbone.
An EU-wide agreement on prisoner transfers comes into force this month, which will enable the UK to repatriate to jails in their own country any EU nationals imprisoned here. Given some 13% of our prison population is made up of foreign nationals, will the Prime Minister ensure that our EU partners stick to these new rules and take their criminals back?
So, with my honourable friend and his strong views asking a question about a successful EU scheme, it really must be Christmas. So it's very welcome. He's absolutely right. We have 13% of our prison spaces are taken by foreign nationals. This is hugely expensive, and this EU-wide agreement gives us great opportunity to return people to their national prisons and save money at the same time.
Mr. Bob Ainsworth,
is freezing the pay of young privates and corporals while they are fighting in Afghanistan without reference to the Armed Forces Pay Review Body a breach of the military covenant?
Well, it is this government that doubled the operational allowance, which I think is the best way to get money to the privates and the corporals in Afghanistan who are doing such a good job, because, of course, the operational allowance, being a flat cash amount of money, is of disproportionate benefit to relatively low-paid people in the armed forces, whereas, obviously, a percentage increase would mean more money for the generals and the colonels and the brigadiers, rather than for, actually, the people on the front line. So I think looking at the operational allowance is crucial, but this government hasn't just done that. We've extended the pupil premium to forces children. We've actually increased the council tax rebates for those who are serving, and for the first time we've written the military covenant into the law of our land.
Chris Kelly.
I commend my right honourable friend for protecting our national interests by exercising the veto last Friday. The people of Dudley South thank him for it. The deal he vetoed commits Eurozone members to restricting structural deficits to below 0.5% of GDP. Did the Prime Minister appreciate that this is 16 times the UK structural deficit left by the party opposite?
I think my honourable friend makes a good point, which is perhaps why the leader of the Labour Party is struggling so much to tell us what his view is about this proposed treaty. Because on the one hand, he wants to join the euro if he's Prime Minister for long enough. On the other hand, he wants to sign a treaty with his incredible... Oh, that's rubbish. He doesn't want to be Prime Minister for long enough. Oh, right. He wants to join the euro, he wants a deal with very tough budget deficit limits, and he wants to increase spending, increase borrowing and increase debt. He tells us he's got a 5-point plan. I can sum it up in 5 words. Let's bankrupt Britain again.
Thomas Doherty.
Mr. Speaker, perhaps the Prime Minister could tell us why the Deputy Prime Minister did not support his position on Europe on Monday, and why did not one single Liberal Democrat MP vote with the Prime Minister last night? Not here.
Well, last night there was something of a parliamentary rarity, which was a motion put down by an opposition party praising the Prime Minister. I'm very grateful to colleagues in the Democratic Unionists. I suspect that many people concluded that Labour simply wouldn't get their act together. It wasn't worth voting, and as a result, we won very easily.
Richard Drax.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am sure the whole House will join me in thanking a remarkable man who has served this country and this place with courage and distinction for nearly 50 years. Eddie Mackay, who is in the gallery right now, has been a doorkeeper here for 23 years and retires on Tuesday. Before coming to this place, he served with distinction with the Scots Guards, leaving after 23 years' service as a senior warrant officer. In the Household Division, you are not promoted to drill sergeant unless you are exceptional. On Tumbledown Mountain, he saw action during the Falklands War in 1982. His company, G Company, 2nd Battalion Scots Guards, led that successful and audacious night assault. Can I ask the Prime Minister, on behalf of us all, to wish Drill Sergeant Andy Mackay a happy retirement and a happy Christmas.
Can I, on behalf of the whole House, thank the honourable gentleman for raising this issue and this question. And on behalf of the whole House, very much thank Andy for his incredible service. I do sometimes think in this House we can take for granted the people who work so hard to keep it working, to keep it going. And I sometimes wonder what they think of all the antics we get up to in this House. But we're incredibly grateful after an incredible service he gave to our nation to come here and work so hard for so many years. We are all in his debt and send him good wishes for his retirement.
Mr. Kevin Barron.
The publication of youth unemployment figures this morning show that in the last quarter, 22% of 16 to 24-year-old economically active citizens are unemployed, an increase of 1.2% on the previous